Alright, today we'll be talking about maximum technique versus domain expansion. We'll be doing a what if you could only have one, because I know that obviously some Jujutsu sorcerers have both, and that you could only use one of them, so either a maximum technique or a domain expansion. So today I'll be doing a collab with Samba. Obviously check out his channel. I would recommend checking out the video on his parallels on Jujutsu Kaisen, and without further ado we'll begin the video. So obviously maximum techniques are the highest application of curse techniques, and a domain expansion is the most supreme ability of any Jujutsu user. It allows them to realize their innate domain by casting a barrier to create a separate space and use curse energy to construct an environment within it. So I'll be arguing maximum technique, Samba will be arguing for domain expansion. So in my opinion, the maximum technique users we've seen so far are Keiichiro and Ezo in the death painting arc. We've also seen Kenjaku and Geto use the Uzumaki, as well as Jogo use his maximum technique of maximum meteor in Shibuya. In my opinion, the reason I prefer a maximum technique is because you take away the biggest weakness of a domain expansion, which is that of the immense curse energy you will have to use it, as well as the potential brief time of deactivation their domain. You won't have low energy reserves, as well as unlikely to be able to cast a second domain. So I believe having a maximum technique, you'll be able to prevent some of this, and obviously perfect the maximum technique in whatever curse energy you used. For example, if a user, in my opinion, who has one in Hajime, I would be able to use something that would maximize the technique usage of electricity, which already has the ability of one-shot capability.
While that is the case, I do feel like maximum techniques are kind of like limited in what they do compared to domain expansions. So like, it makes sense for the energy requirements to be as high as they are. So let's take, like Sukuna, for example, right? You have Malevolent Shrine, 200 meters, it just clears and dismantles anything in its range. And that's just like what we've seen so far. But with maximum techniques, I feel like what you see is the technique in and of itself, and domains are a lot more like fluid in what they can do. Like you can use them offensively, defensively. Some are like non-lethal as well. Take like Higuruma's domain, for example. It's like a judge jury type domain compared to like a maximum technique that we've seen. That's just like pure power, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I think you said some good points, especially in the fact that a domain expansion is way more creative in that regard, as well as the fact that they have more capability to do more with it, like you said with the binding vow Sukuna did with his with his domain expansion. So one thing I want to disagree is 100%, but I think right now with domain expansions, there's a clear cut in terms of if a domain is far stronger than the other domain that will overpower them. So for example, in the terms of maximum technique, it gives them a better capability of using a technique in a different way, which would prevent them from draining their whole curse energy. And for example, we could use this with Jogo. Jogo did not use his domain expansion against Sukuna in the outcome against Shibuya because he knew it wouldn't have effects based on his previous experience with Gojo. And I think similarly because of that, he used his maximum meteor. And even though with Sukuna, who had said that he had dodged said maximum technique, he would have sustained a high amount of damage from the technique, indicating it gives them a different way in which they can attack users, especially those who are far stronger than they are.
Like Jogo used his maximum meteor to try to get a hit on Sukuna because he knew his domain would be outplayed. But with domains, because they have a sure hit, like ability, we can assume that if Jogo managed to catch Sukuna off guard, which is pretty unlikely, but just hypothetically, and casted his domain, he'd be able to get a sure hit attack off, like regardless of potency, which would have done some damage, although probably not as much as the maximum technique, but it would have been something compared to Sukuna just dodging the maximum technique outright.
Yep. No, I agree with that, and I think that is a good point in terms of his ability to obviously draw out Sukuna in another way. The only issue with that is I don't know necessarily if there's a time limit in terms of how long the opponent can then use their domain to overpower the domain. I know how it is in terms of it'll trap them in said environment. So for example, in the Jogo versus Gojo fight, we saw he had the whole iron coffin scenario environment there, but he still had time to then use his ability. So I'm not sure if that would be the case. But in terms of for the majority of sorcerers, especially those that don't have a domains, that would be a situation in which it would be better than a maximum technique because you obviously don't have the capability of having a sure hit. So I agree with you there. But my disagree in terms of that is, let's say even though you were to use this sure hit, because there are different domain expansions that give you a sure one-shot kill, which is example of Gojo, Mahito, and Sukuna, compared to someone like necessarily Jogo, who maybe has the guaranteed hit, but it won't necessarily kill them. So if an individual was then to survive and then let's say have enough curse energy or reverse curse techniques like such, these broken sorcerers, they could do something more. If let's say a maximum technique, because they won't have burnt through their whole curse energy reserves.
That makes sense. That's earlier, but obviously with maximum techniques, there is some aspect of creativity. But I think we can both agree that domains definitely have like creativity over that. But I think certain characters take that a step forward. So we can compare domains. So you have like Mahito's self-embodiment of perfection, which at a core level is a very, very basic, very strong domain, which is just, you know, he touches a soul and it's GG's, that they're just finished. But if we compare that to a more modern sorcerer, like Hakari, we can see his how he's been influenced by the world around him, in the fact that his domain is based off of gambling, and it's so far removed from everything else that we've seen, which I think is like really cool to see. The curse technique of a user has some relation to their personality if it isn't passed down, because Hakari doesn't belong to like a clan. He's just like a regular Jujutsu sorcerer. We can see that his personality coincides like perfectly with his domain. And in the case of someone like Higuruma as well, it's not necessarily an OP power type, but again we can see the influence that his like surroundings have had on him. Like his domain and technique manifested because of his hatred towards the Japanese justice system and by his opinions towards it. Which is also like a really nice touch, how it's like just a whole lost courtroom.
I think I agree with you. In terms of creativity, the domain expansions is just to a different level that maximum techniques can't compare. Obviously maximum techniques is directly correlated with their curse technique and is going to be the highest form of that. So for example, like I previously touched on before, Jogo's was the maximum meteor, so it's akin to his fire ability. However, his whole domain expansion is summoning the environment of an iron core mountain. Like it just shows there's a different level of creativity that unfortunately a maximum technique wouldn't have. And I think that's a good point you made. I mean, it's just different levels. And I think the point you touched upon about the fact that it's directly akin to their personality, I think that's a very good point. And it's something that, and obviously a maximum technique won't have the luxury of doing because it's only limited to their respective cursed energy or cursed technique that they have. So I think that's good. But obviously, thank you for coming on. I think
I appreciate you.
Now, obviously, I think this was a good discussion. So obviously, now that we've got to the end of the video, I'd rather have a domain as well. Fuck a maximum technique. But
tell him again.
But listen, for the sake of the video, we had to be impartial. But obviously, make sure to check out Samba's channel. He does some good content, obviously. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Obviously, like, comment, share, subscribe.